Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Homeschooling Global Summit 2020. I'm Dawn Fong, your host. With me is John Teoh, one of Singapore's many homeschooling graduates. I'll let him share who he is.
Yep, so I'm currently serving national service. Essentially, it's 2 years of military service that every Singapore guy needs to perform once they turn 18. I'm a couple of months away from being operationally ready, which means that I would have finished my service already. So on my off days, I'm the producer of the Socially Awkward podcast, and I'm a photographer specializing in weddings, events, and family shoots. So my long-term goal is to start my own marketing and content creation company. So in 3 years' time, I'll probably be in my second or third year of college, pursuing my degree in media studies. Photography and videography will probably be a side job to earn a little bit of extra income, and I'll hopefully still be involved in some way with the Socially Awkward podcast.
Okay, thank you for that. And how do you think you're going to get there?
Firstly is to build up my portfolio and skills through photography and video projects and self-learning. Now with the internet, you can learn anything through YouTube and Google. Secondly is to enhance and refine my skills through college. And then third is by making connections in the Singapore and American media industry, as well as making connections with other people in college.
And could you tell us why college? Is that an end goal your family wants you to reach? And what college are you considering?
So college was actually something that I wanted to pursue on my own. My family is very open and accepting of the future directions that I want to go in. I believe that college is the place for my technical skills to be developed, as well as somewhere for me to make these connections. So of course a degree is just a piece of paper. However, I believe that it's the experiences that come with it that make this valuable, that make this path most valuable to me. And it's these experiences that will take me the furthest in the media industry. So currently, I am looking at a couple of universities and colleges in the United States. So among them is Asbury University as well as Cedarville.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very intriguing. Let's talk about the Socially Awkward podcast. There are 6 episodes so far. I have listened to all of them, and they have been very intentionally crafted and interesting for me as a parent who is homeschooling, as well as a community leader. We already have homeschooling young voices in our homeschool convention and in print. Now we have the voices of homeschooling teens and graduates literally over the airways. It's something entirely new in Singapore. Please tell us about the Socially Awkward podcast.
Yeah, so the idea for the Socially Awkward podcast was birthed in 2019. One of my favorite YouTubers, Ryan Higa, actually started his Off the Pill podcast. So I was inspired by this and I mulled over the idea in my head, thinking about what are the unique stories I could tell. So after some time I hit upon the idea of telling stories from my experience as a homeschooler, and I wrote up a proposal for a podcast revolving around this theme. So eventually I decided that I'll probably be happier behind the camera and editing the podcast, as those are my areas of expertise. So I managed to convince my friend Emma, who is our host, and I got my sister Rebecca to help write each episode. So when we first started out, we were part of a larger homeschooling project. But then subsequently, we made the difficult decision to produce the podcast on our own, just the 3 of us, so that we could have the liberty to grow in our own direction. Of course, going off, but just the 3 of us had its own difficulties. For one, we never had any experience producing a podcast. I never paid audio editing a lot of attention, and I wanted to use this podcast as a way to develop my skills in this area. So we overcame this by reading up, listening to podcasts that we were interested in, and emulating them. However, it's still an uphill task every episode to continually improve our content and production quality. The next challenge that we faced was that we didn't have the appropriate equipment and environment for recording a podcast. Normally, when you see people recording a podcast, they'll be in a nice, small, soundproofed room. You got those nice microphones, headphones, but we didn't have any of those. So we started out recording in a house with borrowed mics and a mic that we had bought, but we soon realized that this was not conducive. So we went on a search and we found this co-working space. It's called Digital Missions at 360. So they had their own recording studio actually. They graciously allowed us to use the space, and by using our mic together with the one that they already had in the studio, the quality of our podcast drastically improved. So homeschooling gave me the flexibility of time to pick up media skills and to participate in trainings and projects that refined my skills. In terms of how the podcast is run, it's like a combination of the various homeschooling communities that I've been part of. We're driven and work focused, but we also take time to just have fun and relax. We actively seek mentoring and mentor those who are not as experienced. And we're not just focused on the skills that we acquire, but also how we are growing as people.
I like that emphasis very much on people growth. I think that is one of the beautiful things about education for me. I would like to hear more about your educational past and experience as a homeschooler. So could you tell us about your homeschooling experience and some memorable moments?
So I actually started homeschooling ever since I was born. I'm sure there must have been many opportunities for my mom to have put me in a kindergarten or primary school, but she made the choice to homeschool me. I did, in fact, though, go to public school for the first 6 months of secondary 1 when I was 13. However, after that 6 months, my parents made the choice to bring me back to homeschooling. So some memorable moments in my education journey would be when I took the PSLE, which is the primary school leaving examination, when I was 12. So it's a national exam that all students have to take in order to ensure that they meet a minimum required education level. So even though it was an exam, quite a few of my friends were there, so it felt more like a fun meetup instead of an exam. During one of the breaks, we ended up having a huge rubber band fight using the cabinets and tables that were in the holding room as obstacles. Needless to say, the exam proctors were not thrilled by this. Another memorable moment was in 2014, when 2 friends and I won first place in the nationwide Singapore Amazing Flying Machine competition. So using wood and plastic boards, we created an unpowered glider, and with the assistance of our fathers, we made a replica of the competition launcher to test our glider. So after perfecting our glider to the best of our ability, we wrote a presentation discussing the principles of aerodynamics and the theory that went into the development of our glider. To our surprise, we actually ended up beating all the other schools that had taken part and won first place. Travelling overseas has also afforded me memorable learning opportunities, where we went to Fraser's Hill in Malaysia. I had a chance to indulge in my love of nature through bird watching, getting bitten by leeches, and photography, all under the watchful eye of a local guide. In Israel, biblical events came to life. I learned about the process of archaeology through visiting dig sites, and not forgetting the culinary journey of experiencing the unique foods and sweets integral to Middle Eastern culture. I also got the opportunity to trace my family's roots in China on both my paternal and my maternal side, both on separate occasions. I also learned about China's relationship with North Korea as I climbed Changpai Mountain, and got a peek into North Korea across the Yalu River. You can see the North Korean citizens just washing their clothes and soldiers patrolling the riverbanks. So within my family, there's always a discourse about why I'm homeschooled, and if there's always going to be so much academic pressure, I might as well go to school. However, when I think back on the numerous opportunities that have been afforded to me because I'm homeschooled, it makes all the difficulties worth it. Of course, I can say this all in retrospection. There really were times when I just wanted to have my learning spoon-fed to me. There were also the responsibilities of being the oldest child and the only son, so my parents' expectations of me would definitely be higher. Sometimes I'll have less time to myself or be called upon to help out one of my younger sisters. So it's definitely annoying to be called away from what I'm doing, and I'm still wrestling with that. Some days I feel more willing to help, some days it just feels like a chore.
Thank you for sharing so deeply. I really enjoy hearing the unique journey of each homeschooling individual. I'd like to find out, how would you compare yourself to others in school and homeschooling when you were growing up, and how do you see yourself now?
So when I was younger, I didn't really have many friends who went to school, so I didn't have much of a frame of reference for comparison, but I do recall longing for the kind of independence they had, being able to take public transport by themselves or being able to spend their own money. So as I grew older, I did get to know more and more people who did go to public school, and I found myself really grateful for my upbringing. When I was younger, we had a car, so I didn't need to take public transport. I didn't have to spend my own money because I went to most places with my family, which created a very close relationship among us. So I started my national service immediately after graduating high school or secondary school. So I was among the youngest in my batch, as the other trainees had all gone through their post-secondary education prior to enlisting. So because of this disparity between age and state of life that we were in, I found myself wondering why they had achieved more than what I had. Of course, I came to realize that we are obviously at different stages of life and there was no basis for comparison. So now instead of feeling discouraged, I use them as a source of inspiration, telling myself that I want to do what they are doing or even more when I reach a similar stage of life. Would I change anything in my education journey? I don't think so. Who am I is a culmination of everything that has happened, regardless if it was good or bad. Something that I would have liked to have done earlier though is that I wish I had picked up photography earlier. I regret that I don't have many good photos of some of the major cities around the world that I travelled to when I was much younger, such as Beijing, Sydney, Jerusalem, and Hong Kong.
Thank you for that. That's beautiful. What other things shape you besides homeschooling, and how would you define homeschooling for others?
Firstly, being a Christian has definitely been a defining influence in my life. It has shaped my worldview and has given me the lens through which to view the world. I believe that everything I go through is for a reason, no matter how tough it is, and that I know that I can fully rely on God because He knows me, He knows my past, my present, and my future. Secondly, I think I've been shaped a lot by my younger sister who has special needs. So because she learns more slowly than typical kids, I've learned how to be a lot more patient and understanding when dealing with people. It has also made me more sympathetic to this group of people who are often overlooked. How I would define homeschooling is like a restaurant. So I like to use this analogy because restaurants and food is something that everyone can understand and relate to. So homeschooling is like a buffet spread. You get to customize your meal according to what you like and what you enjoy. You can pick and choose from many different places, all sorts of different cuisines and food types. So in the end, you end up a lot more satisfied and you get to taste different things because you're just exposed to this wide variety.
Okay, I've got one more question for you. Would you recommend homeschooling to parents if they asked you, should I homeschool my children?
So if someone asked me if they should homeschool their kid, I would say that every child is different. There is no one perfect educational method for your child. As a parent, you would know your child best and what would benefit them. Of course, the advantage of homeschooling is that you as the parent get to decide what they will study, how they would learn it, and of course as the child grows older, they'll have more say in their education and their path. So I wouldn't say that homeschooling is better than public school. Different children thrive in different sorts of environments, but homeschooling does give you that flexibility for the child that allows them to go off, explore, and to really discover that joy of learning.
Thank you so much for your time, John. I have enjoyed your thoughts on homeschooling, and I'm sure people watching this at the Homeschooling Global Summit will too.